Hello and we welcome you. Hello and we welcome you to the 8th webinar of the year on circular economy on the topic Promoting Welfare of Society with Circular Economy, which is being brought to you by Ecocivilisation in association with Baha Women. My name is Rajni Vohra and I'm founder of Baha Women, and I'm being joined by a very illustrious leader who is also founder and curator of Ecocivilisation, Honorable former Deputy Prime Minister of Slovenia and EU Transport Commissioner Waterless, and my co-host Pina Maya. As we all know that circular economy is not just about consuming less, but it is also about consuming better, which builds on transformative vision that encapsulates not only environmental, but also socio-economic welfare. How circular economy helps promoting the welfare of the society, thus impacting lives, and can act as a catalyst to promote social mobility. With such concerns, today we have three prolific speakers with us who have circular economy as a key integral element in their professional journey. Before we begin today's session, let me quickly share with all our viewers that we have already hosted 7 webinars on circular economy, which are available to watch on social media platforms of Ecocivilisation. We are organizing this series as part of our endeavors to create an awareness and sensitization drive to make a transition from take, make, use, throw mindset to something as sustainable as circular economy, wherein we intend to put across and reiterate the significance of circular economy, broadly addressing why bringing up circular economy has become need of the hour and how we can proliferate this concept not only at individual level, but also not only at social level, but also at individual level. So without any further delay, let's get started with our today's session by inviting Violeta Bulls ma'am to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Rajni. It's a real delight to welcome you again in the Ecocivilisation discussion, and under Rajni's supervision and leadership, this Ecocivilisation in action focusing on circular economy is really evolving well. So thank you to all the speakers to recognize the excitement that the collective dream is bringing, because we have to dare to collectively dream the life we want to live, because we are actually those that we are looking for. We are the ones who create our future, not only for ourselves, but for many, many generations that come behind after us. So we also learned that that can be done only collectively. Individually, we can have our own wishes, but to really move the societies, we need a collective dream. And that's why it's so important that we come together, share ideas, share views. And today we will show that a circular economy is by far more than just economical model. It's something that is shifting our minds, and that helps us to raise our awareness. And we know from philosophers and spiritual leaders that once you are aware of something, that's the moment when you can start changing things. So I'm really, really excited about today's discussion, because we will go beyond just economical model. We will go beyond just our classical action plans of rethink, redesign, reuse, reduce, and of course, recycle. We're going to go now into a social impact as well, into seeing how this shift in our minds and behavior can actually help to evolve a different society. Just as a little teaser, maybe also to our speakers, in our previous events, there is one message that keeps coming back. Then the new wave of global communities is focusing on 3 elements. 1, transparency. 2, trust. And 3, do what it feels right. And with that, back to you, Rajni, and I'm really, really looking forward to hearing our new guests.
Thank you so much, Violeta ma'am. And we are all set to bring to you the best knowledge on the subject with industry experts as panel speakers today. So without any further ado, let me introduce our first speaker of the day, Julia Roebuck. who established upcycle fashion in 2010 while studying for the world's first master degree in fashion and the environment at the London College of Fashion, University of the Arts, London. Through upcycle fashion, she works as a freelancer sustainable fashion workshop facilitator and project manager, focusing on sustainability within fashion and textiles and education. Julia works to enable circular economy around clothing at a local level. To know more about her and her work, let's invite Julia. Julia, over to you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to screen share. There we go. Is that okay? Can I get a thumbs up if that's okay? Yeah, Bob. Okay. So my name is Julia Roebuck and I live in Huddersfield, which is in West Yorkshire in the UK. I'm very excited to be here and amongst you all internationally. So I think, first of all, I can give you a bit of information about me. I live in West Yorkshire now. I grew up here, but I studied in London and I've also lived in Australia. And clothing has always been part of my life. I have always loved, from when I was a young girl, making dresses for my dolls, making clothes for friends and myself and family. And I would always be obsessed with the things that were in the charity shop. So the charity shop or Goodwill or thrift store, the place in which we have about 5 of these shops in my local village where I grew up. And I was obsessed with rummaging through the rails and finding clothing that would call to me for a specific reason, whether it was a colour or a print or a pattern, and I would take it home and I would cut it up and I'd turn it into something else, and I'd be just obsessed with this process and what I was doing. This was in the 90s, early 90s, and when I moved to university down in London, I realised that this process had a word, and that word was upcycling. And I also, when I was in London, met lots of other people who did exactly the same thing and formed and became very aware of this network. And again, this was in about 2005. And the whole idea of sustainability and sustainable fashion and what that is was really kind of coming to the fore in terms of London Fashion Week. They had Aesthetica, there were brands popping up with organic, recycled, upcycled collections. So it felt like there was a real movement around the world. And sustainability within the fashion industry had really kind of started really to build the momentum that was set in the 80s. I felt at the time, and really do still strongly feel, my obsession with waste textiles, and utilising that resource is at the heart of what I do and really how I believe the industry can be transformed. So this is me having a bit of a play around with some waste. So through my work, I run what I call a circular clothing practice. And I work with school groups, with businesses, with communities around the UK to teach skills for making, mending, upcycling clothing. But also I work as a project manager to connect industry, individuals, third sector, to make the most of waste textile resources and feed them back into projects or set up projects that can use it as their new raw material. So for those of you that aren't too familiar with the impacts of the textiles and fashion industry on our planet, I've basically just kind of broken it down into these 6 main issues. So textile waste, filling up landfill sites and incineration plants. If it doesn't end up in your general black bin waste, it can end up in either a charity shop or a clothes bank, which are inundated with clothing, way more than they could ever even sell. And I'll come on to that shortly. So the waste of textiles and where our waste clothing ends up is a real issue. Carbon emissions, obviously, the fashion and textiles industry is a global industry. Materials, components are being grown and produced in different countries to where they're actually then being cut, made and sewn together, which are then being flown or shipped to other countries where they're being sold, and then we wear them, and then they're being shipped to other countries where they're then being reused and sold through used clothing markets. The pollution from not only kind of land pollution, water pollution, air pollution from the industry side, the production side of the fashion and textiles industry, but prolific water pollution through dyeing and toxic chemical usage in the processing of materials. Land use for growing cotton, again, irrigation, the issue cotton's an intensive kind of water crop, but it's one of our most dominant fibers along with polyester. So the land use for growing these natural fibers. And then at end of life, we've got issues with recycling. We can't recycle textiles as easily as we can with a monofiber, like a plastic bottle or a cardboard box. Increasingly so, clothing is made of blended fibers with embellishments, prints, glitter, zips, buttons, rivets. We've got lots of components that go into the process and make it increasingly difficult for recycling in its form that we know it with a lot of other materials. Microfibers from the laundering impact of our clothing globally. So we have synthetic microfibers that end up washed into our waterways and our oceans, and I'm sure we're all aware of hearing issues around that, but we've also got natural microfibers which aren't degrading in marine environments as quickly as we have been expecting, and we think that that's to do with the chemical coatings and the dyes that are included. So basically just setting the scene of why we urgently need to move our fashion and textiles industry beyond current practice, beyond this linear practice, and into a circular model. So there's some of the environmental reasons, but I'm here today because part of my work fundamentally believes that a circular clothing system is better for people as well. In the UK, this was the impact when we locked down for the pandemic. Basically, everybody was stuck at home, everybody had a clear out. And this is some of the pictures from our used clothing sector here in the UK. So the left one is some textile banks, like donation banks. If you don't want to take it to a charity shop, you take it to a donation bank. They were all taped up because that whole supply chain, that whole kind of bottleneck of stuff, because nothing was going overseas, nothing was able to be processed, got taped up. Clothing, that's the charity shop, picture of a charity shop in the middle, all of the clothing that people just cleared out, filled bags in community halls and charity shops around the country. And the charity retail sector is one of the main ways in which we deal with used clothing here in the UK. Behaviours of donating clothing are really it's a really kind of well-travelled route is a charity shop for unwanted clothing here in the UK. But actually, the capacity and the ability that many charity shops have to process everything that's donated is pretty impossible. So I pulled together some statistics here from RAP, which sits with DEFRA from our UK government, for the Charity Retail Association, and from the Fashion Revolution campaign. So with all of the clothing that's actually discarded through black bins, through those donation banks and the charity sector, if you break it down, kind of get down right to the bottom, only 16% of all that discarded clothing is actually sold back into the community. So shoppers who go into the charity shop to buy their clothing from a charity shop, only 16% of that clothing is sold back into communities, and 84% of it is not. So that's either landfilled, incinerated, exported to used clothing markets, or sold into what I call the downcycled aspect of the industry. So that's shredding clothing and using it for things like car seat stuffers, insulation, mattresses, that kind of thing. And I think that 16% really shows that the charity retail sector in the UK, whilst raising a lot of money for charities, and that's so important, when you frame it from a waste perspective, I think there is a lot of opportunity for them to better act as resource material hubs in our communities at a really local level. And that opportunity is where my work sits, in exploring how can we better direct the clothing that is donated and discarded in communities. How can we better utilise that as a resource? So when I talk about my work, I always use the word clothing rather than fashion, because every single person on this planet at some point wears clothing. We are all fundamentally part of the fashion and textiles industry. But I feel that when I frame it as fashion and textiles, people feel a bit excluded. They don't feel part of a fashion industry. They're not working in it. They don't consider themselves maybe particularly fashionable. But when I talk about clothing, it becomes much more available to them as a conversation and as an opinion that they have, because everybody buys clothing, everybody wears clothing. So putting people at the heart of it has changed how I speak, the words I use, the language I use when I'm talking to people about these issues. And this quote that Fashion Revolution have branded up for their social media was actually a quote from 𝐓𝐿𝐼, who says, "Waste isn't waste until we waste it." And again, that puts us humans, citizens, at the heart of these supply chains of the materials that we are engaging with. Our opinions and our feelings towards these materials make a massive difference in how we use them. So I'm going to run through the ways in which I put circularity to improve the welfare of society and how it can with clothing specifically. So I'm going to talk through localism, community, mental health, and activism. So the first one is keeping clothing in active use locally. So there's a few different ways in which this can be directed. But for example, keeping school uniform within this, either the school or with your community, or we have here in West Yorkshire a uniform exchange. So school uniform doesn't end up in those used clothing routes or those export markets. It stays within society to be used by local people in the schools that they're going to. Repair cafes, utilising unwanted materials for the benefit of skills development. And we've got Sanctuary Clothing Project here, which is a clothing project which takes, again, donated clothing, but keeps it in our local authority to be distributed to refugees, obviously a big one at the moment, especially where we are in West Yorkshire. And a lot of male clothing is specifically required. So in the way that Uniform Exchange will then take uniform, the Sanctuary Clothing Project are really looking for menswear at the moment, because that's the primary market for their clients and their refugees that are coming through at the moment. But as that expands, the Sanctuary Clothing Project is also working with domestic abuse shelters, so that women's and children's clothing is also going to be really useful for them. Circularity and building community around clothing. I don't know here if anybody's ever sat and made a garment or done some sewing or patched or repaired an item of clothing in a group of people around you. There's just something about it that is really freeing. You're not forced to be making eye contact with people. You're using your hands, you're using your skill, you're pretty much eyes down, concentrating on what you're sewing. And some of the conversations that can happen, whether that's on Zoom, like we've had to do in lockdown, or in real life, is what I'm hoping to get back to in physical spaces. Some of those conversations that develop and grow out of that really kind of not forced environment, but a really creative and a really skills-based and encouraging environment can be so great at bringing people together to celebrate either making clothing or mending clothing or swapping clothing as well. So thinking about how we move resources around communities at a local level. Circularity in clothing for mental health. So mendfulness is something that I refer to a lot, which is a kind of hashtag that's evolved through social media, but it combines mending and mindfulness. It's been really well documented that practice of either knitting or sewing and whatever kind of handcraft it is gives you, kind of forces you just to slow down, to focus, to have some time and just to think. And the well-being that can be generated from that simple act of sewing, but when you add it to mending, the feeling of achievement and pride in physically mending something that would otherwise have been waste is a really, really powerful tool. I've just received some funding to set up a mendfulness course in my local community here. So I'm going to be shortly commencing a 6-week course teaching people some really basic sewing skills for mending, customizing, and upcycling. And my fourth one is activism. One of my favorite quotes is from The Economist, that's from a couple of years ago, and they say, in a disposable society, to repair is to rebel. And when I go into schools or I speak with universities or guest lecturers, and I say that making clothing or repairing your clothing is a radical act, I get a bit of a giggle, because people don't ordinarily sometimes see where I'm coming from with that. But in a society where we are constantly being marketed at, where buying something new, where the kind of social activity that we have usually for a weekend is to go shopping, to take a stance from that, to set aside from that, that you're actually going to choose to keep what you have for as long as possible in a society that's dominated by fast overconsumption, is really radical. And in doing so, you can be part of the solution. When I hear about climate anxiety or kind of eco awareness that makes people feel anxious, one of the main things that people say to make you feel better about that is to get involved in something that will make a difference, to take action, to change your behaviors and bring others on that journey with you. And by repairing your clothing to keep it in active use for as long as possible, by buying secondhand, by swapping or sharing clothing with your friends and avoiding that dominant mainstream kind of consumerist pitch around how most people engage with the acquisition of clothing, by stepping aside from that, you can really make a difference. So to conclude, my work is all around getting people to think and connecting up locally what clothing is being wasted, or what clothing is being discarded, and who could use that for its best potential, really at a really local level. So I feel charity shops are really best placed to act as these textile hubs. And instead of things just going to shop sales or rag sales, that we work collectively to come up with solutions to divert different waste streams into different areas. So whether that's a repair rail at your charity shop or in your community centre or your library, to set up a clothes bank in the food bank, to set up uniform exchanges for school uniform at every single school. Yes, selling things through the shop back to customers as well, but as I showed you in those original statistics, that is only 16% of all what happens to all donations. We need to get creative, we need to organise, we need to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you so much for such a comprehensive presentation on fashion and textile, giving us some indirect highlights about textile industry also. And I think you are the first speaker we have ever had who comes from this industry. So we are very delighted to have your opinion and how you have been taking care of wastage and circular, and you are trying to follow circular economy in your country. It's really appreciable. I have a quick question for you.
Yeah, sorry, I've not seen any of the chat. I can, yeah, right, happy to ask any questions. So yeah, send them through.
Yeah, so my question is regarding one of the key points that you highlighted in your presentation, which is wastage. Yeah. And we all know, and of course, some people don't want to agree on this fact, that fashion industry is considered to be one of the major polluting industry across the world. It is not nation specific. It is the story across the world. And the textile industry is the second largest polluter of local fresh water in the world. This is also as per the data. However, contrary to this fact, nowadays what we see that nobody wants to repeat the attire that they wore once in their life or on a particular occasion. This is also one of the trends, especially I know that if I just say it is gender specific, then there would be many people after me. But you know what I'm trying to say. So I just want to understand, on one hand, we are talking about wastage. On the other hand, we are promoting that behavior, which is not very good for the environment. How do you reflect on this paradox?
Well, absolutely. I think as I referred to in the presentation, like keeping clothing in active use, keeping your clothing, mending it, doing whatever. And I think to mend something is to take true ownership of it. We can't just keep buying and discarding our clothing without having any active input into its longevity. So, but I would say that repeated wears and promoting that is also is as much part of it as mending is. So trying to overcome the stigma of it. And I did a project a few years ago where I had just to give you an example, I was a bridesmaid I was a bridesmaid for a wedding in a year that I had to go to about 7 weddings. And I made the intentional decision that the bridesmaid dress that I wore for that first wedding, I would wear for every wedding that year. And kind of and I think that's the great thing about clothing, is that it's so visual, and everybody has the opportunity to really be quite radical in how they dress and what they wear and what they're saying, and kind of be an activist in what you wear, to break that stigma of different garments. But again, that only comes from, that is a taught, it's a kind of taught aesthetic to be different. You know, that has been paid for by the marketing departments of our clothing industry. That's not something that we're inherently born with, that we've been told that that's the cool thing to do, or that's the best thing, and that you're boring, or that you're out of style if you don't wear anything all the time. So I think just having the confidence to see through that, to see past that, and in, you know, the clothing that you love and that you wear, and that's what, you know, the Vivienne Westwood quote is, you know, choose well, make it last. So if we have in our wardrobe a small collection of garments that we absolutely love and that want to wear forever, then wear that dress at every wedding, you know, wear that outfit to every party. And if that's not you, if you are just a person who even you can see beyond the marketing but still doesn't fit right with you, then there are ways in which you can access different garments. So you can swap with your friends, you can borrow things. There's the rental platforms. I know that that's been, some of the statistics around carbon emissions for rental have been, you know, debated and taken a little bit out of context, but there are ways in which you can change your clothing that doesn't have such a massive impact on wasting the planet. So I think I would always advise people to just buy what they love or make what they love and wear it for as long as possible. But if you really, really feel like you're not a person who could do that, borrow your friend's dress, you know, or borrow your mate's jumper or hoodie or whatever, you know, for the party. And then, yeah, try and think of ways around the issue.
Thank you so much, Julia. I hope people listen to you and they follow what you have been suggesting them, because it's a huge problem and it's everywhere. So thank you so much. And Tina, have you got any other question for Julia or not yet?
We have one from Violeta. I mean, maybe if you want to ask it yourself, or I can read out loud. But apart from that, that's it. Should I read it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay. So at the end, you have showed a new value network built around the upscaling fashion. Which is the most challenging phase? What is the critical mass of the supply to run it smoothly?
Yeah, good question. I think it's those initial conversations. It's about forging those channels, like literally digging, physically digging that tunnel to connect up. And then once it's in there and it's everybody knows what's going on, being able to discuss face to face is so important as well. I feel just going in and meeting somebody, explaining in person what you're doing and why, and making that connection. And then that kind of flow can happen a lot easier as soon as everybody knows what's going on and why and what time and who's doing it. And that trust, you know, like you said, that transparency, trust, and do what feels right. I really agree with that. You said at the beginning, I think that's really important. But the main barrier is initially bringing everyone into that conversation after it's not happened. You know, it's new, it's different.
Thank you so much, Julia. We request you to stay with us till the end of the event.
Yes, I can.
Thank you so much. And it's time to invite our next speaker, Tadashi Kubu from Japan, who is co-founder and CEO of AC Biode in Luxembourg, Japan, and the UK. He worked 12 years at Sojitz Corporation on business development and project finance about battery, machinery, infrastructure, renewable energy, mainly in Africa and Latin America. Having worked in Asia, Angola, and Brazil, Tadashi holds an MBA from Judges Business School, the University of Cambridge, a former bronze medalist at the featherweight class of Japan's national boxing. So Tadashi, we welcome you wholeheartedly, and it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? I'm just going to
Yes.
share my screen. 1 second. squeezing. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, okay, great. Again, thank you for having me. Let me introduce about what we do on ClimateTech startup based on chemistry and material science. We have expertise. And today we're gonna introduce two projects. One is that it's very niche, that we upcycle ash from power plants or sludge in underground water into absorbent or even cosmetic products. The other, oops, it's gone. Okay, anyway, the other is that we have that project to make a waterless composting toilet so that we don't need any infrastructure or water pipelines, but we can make composting toilets with our chemical engineering. So we have 4 projects that we are developing new type of lithium-ion batteries for mobility and energy storage, renewable energy. Also, we are making a chemical catalyst to chemically recycle plastic waste into monomer gas. The other 2 that I'm gonna explain to you later. And we are got funding by the European Union called EIT InnoEnergy. Oops. So what we do is the ash, upcycling ash, because ash is one of the biggest problems at the power plant. It actually, do you know that it costs hundreds of thousands of euro, or sometimes a few millions euro to just to dispose these ashes, because ash from power plants includes heavy metals, and it's not easy to transport from the plant to landfill place. So what we do is we upcycle them on site, just next to the power plant, into these chemical products, as you can see here. It's in a powder form, and we provide engineering services to these energy companies, for example, like RWE or Eneco in Europe, for example. It's a little bit too detailed, but our chemical products that we make from ash have several advantages, such as it's more affordable, and we can capture more chemical products. For example, oil from oil spills in the ocean, and we are now testing to capture carbon emissions or CO2 from the air, as well as we capture several products such as, for example, nuclear waste from nuclear power plants. We use as filters, sanitary goods, cosmetics, beauty products, masks, and so on. And so far, that the impact we have created are that we have successfully completed 2 projects in Japan and Taiwan, and we successfully upcycle coal ash and also biomass ash as well. I know coal-fired power plant is not always good for the environment, but the reality is that still a lot of countries have to use or no choice to use until for several years, for 5 or 10 years. So what we do is we won't increase the number of coal-fired power plants, but what we do is to improve relatively a little bit greener than the existing facilities of these coal-fired power plants. We also expanding despite the COVID. We got a contract, for example, in Thailand to upcycle biomass ash from rice husk. Also, we just signed 2 contracts, MOUs, memorandum of understanding, in Kazakhstan, and one in Bangladesh with a UK company called GCM Resources. Yeah, that's briefly about the first project. Here you go. So the second project we are working and also commercialized is that it's toilet, but without infrastructure and water pipeline. We call the AC Biode. So the problem with the toilet, as you might know, that we need to build infrastructure, electricity, and water. And also when it comes to mobile toilet, like the one in the middle, it smells really bad, and it has to use a lot of chemicals and special bacteria to handle human feces, as well as sludge is a big issue, especially at remote areas, for example, camps, construction site events, and so on. So what we do is we have different types of waterless composting toilet. It's no infrastructure, no water needed, and it's smell neutral, and we don't need like a pipeline or underground system because it's completely make a circular economy within the toilet. And after use, including toilet paper, we use that as a fertilizer in the farms, or you can legally throw away anywhere in the mountains or anywhere. So if we compare with the conventional toilet or mobile toilet, it's more affordable and it's more easier to handle with, and the price is cheaper as well for in terms of maintenance and the machines itself. We have a partner in Japan and several countries, and we have already installed more than 3,000 bio toilet systems mainly in Asia, in the US, Australia, where the areas with water is limited. And also we want to aim to expand the system in emerging markets, including also Europe as well. So in applications, we can use, for example, for against natural disasters, like the one, for example, flood in Germany. It's not easy to use the toilet after the floods or earthquakes or typhoons. So we can make a temporary toilet very quickly, and it's very much more comfortable than just using a plastic bag. You can also use for elderly people, like nursing homes for elderly people at individual houses, remote areas, construction sites, areas with limited water, offshore, the ships, island resorts, as well as we are getting popular on the system to provide this system for dogs, pets, cats, and the pet, because the frequency of the changing sands for the pets is hectic. So we can reduce the frequency by using sawdust, just normal wood chips, instead of the sand. And for wood chips, you can locally procure. We don't need to export from Asia, but you can just buy these wood chips like any shops locally. So here's our team. So we are well balanced among business, finance. We have engineers on material science, chemistry, engineering, and environmental science. So that's briefly about us, almost 10 minutes. So so yeah, we are happy to discuss further if you guys are interested for the specific project on the power plant or recycling ash from the underground water, or if anyone would be interested for the toilet and with a circular economy system, that I'm more than happy to chat and happy to answer your questions. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Tadashi, for such a terrific presentation. In fact, I think all 4 projects that you have shown to us have got great value as far as social welfare is concerned. And especially, I think a couple of your projects are so much beneficial for all the society, especially I see in India, great scope of composite toilets. Because in India, in Asian countries, it's a huge problem of toilets. So we have got a couple of questions for you. Let me begin with the question that Violeta ma'am has for you. And this question is about dealing with ashes on the spot. How do you deal with ashes on the spot? Or you need to transport it further to decompose?
What are we gonna do is we make a recycling plant just next to where ash are made. For example, biomass power plant or incinerators of sludge. So actually, we don't need the transportation so that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions and also potential air pollutions by us transportation.
Okay, great. We are also having people here who want to contact you after this event.
Yes,
so,
definitely. Feel free to reach out to me. You can check our website. Or maybe, okay, I'm going to type in my email address here on the chat.
Yes, you can, certainly. Tadashi, I just want to understand about the other product that you didn't share much about, that is Circularity, that cleanses water in 30 seconds. I have seen the video that you have posted on your website. So I think the virtue of that product is that it has ability to clean water in 30 seconds. Have you experimented with that product at some massive scale, say on dams, some canals, somewhere like this? Tadashi, can you hear us? It looks like bad internet connection. So, Violeta, in the meantime, Tadashi reconnects. Can we invite a third guest? Okay. So viewers, it's time to invite someone who has focused his activity on building a future of sustainability and wellness, who tries to align both in the co-creation of economical, social, and environmental value which is regenerative and distributive. Pedro 𝐐𝐬 Martinez started in Valencia in the habitat and furniture sector. Pedro works as a circular economy researcher and industrial designer at Inno3 right now, and have collaborated with brands as Cultura Circular or Circular Cultura, a triple impact startups, and many other startups. So very pleased to have you, Pedro, here, and it's over to you.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. Hello. I would like to say some of these people I work with are currently seeing us. Carla from Terrenae, and I think Bea from Circular Culture is also here. So, okay, I'm going to start. And first of all, well, you know me, I'm Pedro 𝐐𝐬. I'm an industrial and graphic designer focused on circular economy. And first of all, I would like to show a basic scheme of what our linear economy currently is. So in our linear economy, we extract resources. We know that from nature, we produce, and then we consume. But why do we do that? We do that to get what in economics is called utility. And utility is nothing but the satisfaction we get from the use of these goods and services that we've produced. So this scheme is incomplete because resources might be non-renewable or renewable, but either way, they are not infinite. And in each stage, we produce waste. And the problem with this is we are losing value we could leverage to get more utility. But there are more problems because this waste might be absorbed by nature, by the environment, so that it regenerates our environment. But sometimes our environment cannot absorb it, and then it generates, it results poisonous for both our environment and for us. So, as in Slow Factory, they say everything we make returns to the earth as either food or poison. So my point here is economy is already circular. The thing is, are we making it regenerative or poisonous? And returning to this notion of utility, of the satisfaction of our needs, there's a complementary concept to circular economy, which I like a lot, and it is the donut economy by Kate Raworth. So Kate Raworth, she does not only establish this ecological ceiling we must not exceed with items like climate change, air pollution, biodiversity loss, but she also establishes the social foundation, a minimum we have to guarantee. We have to generate utility in a way that everyone has their needs covered, but we don't exceed the ecological ceiling. And to me comes a concept which I find is key here to achieve this, and it's the concept of access. So this is the Venus project. It's created by Jack Fresco. He was an industrial designer like me, and they imagined in this project a world where cities function with no money, and they had a center of access of resources where everyone could go there and use the resources, but they didn't have to purchase them or even to own them, to have property over them. This might sound quite utopic, but the thing is, this has inspired some initiatives such as the libraries of things. You know what a library is, you can borrow books there, so in a library of things, you may borrow nearly whatever. And yeah, borrowing is the new buying, as they say. Libraries of things are about sharing the things. They are places you can go there and borrow whatever, maybe a drill, maybe, yeah, you see here the saw, and you use it and then you turn it back and someone else can use it, so that we don't have to purchase it. This obviously has a lot of benefits for the planet, as we don't have to extract so much resources and produce so much waste, but it also has benefits for us. Julia already spoke about the relationship between circular economy and community and the benefits it can give us, but also if we don't have to purchase things, we can save resources for what's really important, and we can even save space for these things. So this is a library of things in the UK, but actually there are quite a lot around the world. You can see them in this map. And now I would like to introduce you to my friend Rodolfo. So Rodolfo is a musician, he's a dreamer, but he's also an entrepreneur with quite a lot of experience with this library of things concept, because his enterprise, his project, Alo Club, is a space where you could go and rent things such as a tent. For example, you want to go for the weekend to the mountains and you don't have a tent, you don't have to purchase a tent for all your life if you're using it just for the weekend. So his motto is the product at your service. We're speaking about servitization. The thing is, Rodolfo right now is changing his business model. It's switching to a more decentralized one, where instead of having a physical space to go there and rent the things, he's working with different commerce, with the local commerce, so that you could go to each store and rent the things that you need. And in this process of change, we are redesigning the whole corporative identity. Another friend of mine who's right now listening to us, Bea, she's the founder of Cultura Circular, circular culture in English. And we've got some projects such as this circular escape room. But right now we are working with the Red Cross in a workshop about green and circular employment. So we are researching right now about how circular economy also unlocks opportunities in the shape of employment and job for more people. Actually, the International Labour Organization has spoken about this as well and given some some numbers of new employment created in a circular economy. And another very important thing to have access to is food. This is Mateo. We interviewed him in our podcast, Fact Lineal, and his project is El Pallet. El Pallet basically wants to reduce the amount of food waste, which is still suitable to eat. And we know in the supermarkets, sometimes food is thrown away or even destroyed when it's still suitable. And on the other hand, they want to reduce food scarcity, food scarcity in Lleida, which is the town near Barcelona here in Spain, where they are working. So they collect this food, and then they've got a center of distribution where people could go and have a cheap access to this food. So yeah, it's circular, it minimizes waste, and then it gives access to more people to food. And talking about food, well, yeah, this is episode number 5. You can listen to him here. It's in Spanish, but anyway, I hope you can understand something, and he talks more about this project. And talking about food, this is Carla from Terrenae. We also designed the corporative identity, and her project is basically a platform which connects people, for example, in the city, with local producers, producers who produce food in a sustainable and healthy way, so that people have access to these kind of options to buy, and producers as well have more opportunities. And yeah, so this concept of platform is actually very interesting in circular economy, and we couldn't skip Fab Labs, because Fab Labs are actually like a platform, and they are a space where you could go and you can pay for the use of tools to design, make, repair, whatever your things. But well, there are tools like laser cut, 3D printing, but also a drill, a saw, whatever. But you've got also access to a community, because people go there, so you could exchange knowledge, and maybe you've got the tools, but you don't know how to repair your radio, but maybe someone else does there. And Fab Lab is a platform actually, and it's a network all around the world. As you see here, there are quite a lot, and you've got the map here. I could send to you the presentation later if you want to the participants, so that they can check the links and so on. And now that we are talking about designing and making things, let's say that Ellen MacArthur Foundation says circular economy is based on 3 principles, which are or led by design, by intention. So design is the previous thinking of how products, graphics, or whatever should be, even business models, policy, public policies, everything. And something I think design should do in a circular economy is switch from product focus to systems thinking. So here, I want to introduce you to my mate, Alex. Here we are. We presented this project, Compound, to distributed design for circular cities. And we didn't want to just design the composter and the recycling bins, the different models, but we intended to design like a whole system around it, where you could download the open source files and share with the community, share your experience composting, and even we wanted to generate some educational experience about circular economy around this product. So another thing that I think design should do is switch from individual to collective action. I think Violeta or Ragni maybe mentioned this switch from individual to collective before in the presentation, in the introduction. And in this way, design should be co-design. This one's another mate of us in the studio, Mark, and we have been participating in this project, designing Lo Porvenir, what's to come. Lo Porvenir means the future, what's to come. And it's a project organized by 𝐏𝐿𝐴, Art Therapy Institute, and sponsored by World Design Capital Valencia. And there are some initiatives which are collaborating. So the project is about co-designing with different collectives in these organizations from a social inclusion perspective. And I'm going to mention the case of 𝐏𝐿𝐴, where Mark was working, because 𝐏𝐿𝐴 is an organization that wants to collect the waste in the cities, such as clothes you no longer need, and you go there and they collect them, and they want to promote the reusing of this waste. We could say waste, but it's not actually waste. So the work of Lo Porvenir with 𝐏𝐿𝐴 ended in this in products like this. And this is Laura, who was working with Mark as well in this project. And the collective co-designed and made these products from the waste, from the clothing waste, which have, again, value, which can give utility and have a value for themselves. The photos of the project are from Ana Ferrandis, and yeah, you've got the link here in case you want to check a bit further. So to sum up, yeah, we already know that circular economy can tackle the climate crisis and can have positive environmental impacts, but it can also have positive social and economical impacts by mainly, I feel, these concepts of access, as we said, as we saw with our club, Fab Labs, and so on, and also participation and opportunities for the people to make their own decisions and to leverage the value that they've got. And that's a bit all. You can find me LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter in 𝐵𝑒𝑠_Aimar. Design in Beta is the project which I'm developing with Mark and Alex, these two mates of me. And FAC Lineal is a circular economy and sustainable development podcast. Sintonía Ambiental is a series of webinars on these topics as well. Both of these are in Spanish, but anyway, I hope you can enjoy them. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro, for amazing presentation. In fact, we have been introduced to some innovative linguistic words that at least I had not heard them before. So thank you so much. And I have a question for you. My question is that as you have been promoting the idea of circular economy through your art, through design in different areas. So in your experience, by and large, till date, what has been the biggest challenge or resistance that you have faced in the society you have faced?
So I think we are still facing these challenges. First, I would say is lack of knowledge, because, for example, you go wherever, which is not a place they speak of circular economy and they're into these topics, and they even don't know what circular economy is. And who knows it maybe thinks it's about recycling, and we know recycling is like the last step of circular economy. Before, we have to share the utility, to share the products, to repair, and even to regenerate if we can with biological nutrients. And then last thing is recycling. So people actually don't know about it. Then perhaps some people in the private sector can't see yet the opportunity, the economical and financial opportunity that circular economy can unlock. So they would see investing in circular economy rather than as an invest, they would see it as a waste, or yeah, as a spending money there. And maybe we have a lack of transparency yet, which I think, yeah, you already said it, and I think it's very important so that we can exchange knowledge, tools, whatever, and we can cooperate and work together. Yeah.
Thank you, Pedro. And I would like to request all our viewers, if they have got any question for any of our speakers, please feel free to write mention in the comment or chat box. And Tadashi is back. So Tadashi, would you like to answer the question that I asked you?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I just back. Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. And so the 𝐏𝐞𝐳 we make from ashes, we can use, not only for small scale, but we have already sold to, for example, clothing or dyeing factory in Bangladesh, and to one of the biggest fashion companies we have tested. So yes, to answer your questions, we can use our absorbent 𝐏𝐞𝐳 for wastewater treatment from factories. But from a dam, we have never tried, but it's potentially yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry for that. The connection seems bad.
No problem. So is there any more question for our speakers before we wrap up the event?
Yeah, we have one from Rita, but go on and ask it.
I was just wondering, Pedro, this is quite a diversified group of people that collaborate on one single project. Have you done any redesign on the organizational design as well? Is there anything new emerging from there? Because this seemed to be one of the challenges of this network-based inclusive sort of not only companies, but or any kind of organization. So have you thought of any new organizational redesign?
So do you mean an organization?
The way how you are organized within this Venus project?
Okay, I think it's key here to consider that it's not just me. So there are a lot of people collaborating here. Communication is vital to keep it. So these different and diversified projects can go ahead because there are more people working on them, and we are all collaborating, and sometimes even synergies flow between different projects and groups, and that always empowers the different projects. But yeah, I have to work for a long time to keep all these projects. Yeah.
Mm.
Any more question, Pina? Okay. So with this, we proceed towards wrapping up our session.
Julia has one, if I understood.
Okay, please.
Yeah, I was just going to, as an ending, I'm very aware that everybody here except me probably speaks an additional language like this. And I wonder if the circular economy, is that the phrase that's used around the world, or does every language interpret that? Is there is linguistically different, or is circular economy just what it's called in those words?
Well, it's translated, at least in Slovenian, into krožno gospodarstvo, which means literally circular economy.
Yeah. Is that the same in Spanish?
It's economía circular.
Can everybody type there into the chat what it would be in their additional language, in another language? Because I think that's
in Japanese we don't use alphabets, so we have different words, completely different, like 𝐓𝐚𝐽 𝐳,
Okay, I think, Julia, this is a very interesting question, and thank you so much for asking this question. I believe in most of the parts of the world, the term circular economy is well understood. Because if I try to translate in my language, which is predominantly Hindi, so I may not find the precise terminology, or I might not be aware of it. It means that nobody is using that terminology to express or to talk about the idea of circular economy. So the term circular economy is well accepted and understood the way it is understood across the world. So for India, you can, I think, more or less, you can say that circular economy is well-known terminology and it is used here. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you so much, speakers, once again. Thank you, Tadashi. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Julia, for such insightful presentation and for being with us. It's been really, really learning and knowledge-filled session. We are also very thankful to our participants for their active participation, interest, and time. Please keep visiting www.ecocivilisation.eu for further events and their details. Thank you once again for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Till then, take care and bye-bye.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Take
Thank you
care.
so much.
Good day.
Good day to you. Bye-bye.